Hi, this is Matt Kaplan with the Punks Eagle Healthcare Group at Ladenburg Thalmann, here with Peter Strumph and Nile Therapeutics, and this is BioBusiness TV. Peter, pleased to be here with you. Can you tell us a little bit about how Nile Therapeutics got started and what the focus of the company is?
Sure. So we started Nile when we licensed CDNP from the Mayo Clinic. The molecule was originally developed at the Mayo Clinic from their cardiorenal research labs. Dr. Burnett and Dr. Lisi are the co-inventors of the molecule. It has interesting properties associated with it, and we thought that there were several drug development opportunities. So we licensed the product in and founded the company around that initial product. We've raised $24 million in capital. We are now listed on NASDAQ, Nile NLTX, and we're off and running at present in phase 2 clinical development.
That's great. With respect to the competitive landscape in the heart failure and cardiovascular area, and
sure.
MI, also myocardial infarction. Could you tell us a little bit about how CDNP fits into that landscape?
Sure. So I'll answer that question with respect to heart failure first, since it's our lead indication. Heart failure, there's been an evolution in terms of the treatment of heart failure, in particular acute heart failure. Traditionally, cardiologists treated heart failure with drugs that work essentially on the heart. More recently, though, the significance of renal function has become known to be a big prognostic have prognostic value in terms of determining outcomes. So physicians are paying more attention to both hemodynamic and renal activities of drugs. And they treat heart failure with drugs that work either on the hemodynamic side or the renal side. CDNP was designed to have both favorable hemodynamic and renal properties. So with respect to the competitive landscape, most drugs in development at present work on one or the other, whereas CDNP works on both.
Great. And give us a little bit more color in terms of the market size, and is there still an unmet need? You know, there are several drugs approved for this indication, heart failure. Could you add a little color on that?
Sure. So there's clearly an unmet need for the treatment of heart failure. If you look at heart failure as a disease condition in the U.S., it affects more than 5 million patients with more than 500,000 new cases per year. The acute condition of heart failure, where we're developing the drug for acute decompensated heart failure, is actually the most frequent cause of hospital admissions for persons over 65 years of age in the U.S. And subsequent to being discharged after an acute event, there are still high rates of mortality and morbidity. So there's clearly an unmet need associated with it. When patients come in for an acute event, they stay on average of 4.3 days. So the several million patients that come in the U.S. at 4 days, that's 8 million days of hospital care to treat acute heart failure. It's quite expensive, and there's quite a lot of unmet need.
Great. And just to dive a little bit more into CDNP, it's a natriuretic peptide, and there's another natriuretic peptide that was approved called Natricor. Talk about a little bit how it differs from Natricor and how you think it can differentiate in the marketplace when it's approved.
Sure. So we're really building off the peptide stories that have come before us, and there are several peptide precedents. You mentioned one, BNP, also known as Nasiritide or Natricor, which is sold by J&J right now, approved in the U.S. for acute decompensated heart failure. There's also another peptide, ANP, which is sold in Japan, and there have been several peptides in development. All of these peptides share a characteristic that they work on the natriuretic peptide receptor A. So they work on the A receptor. Our peptide works on the B receptor, or works primarily on the B receptor. And there's a difference between working on the A and working on the B. When you work on the A receptor, you cause hypotension because it dilates the arteries. So any effect you have is coincidental with arterial dilation, which leads to hypotension. Mm-hmm. With our product, we dilate preferentially the veins. So when we have our vasodilative effect, like all peptides have, we dilate preferentially the veins, which in heart failure leads to a direct reduction in what is called preload, or a reduction in wedge pressure, which is one of the objectives of treatment, is to get the preload down. So our product works more directly to target preload reduction without the corresponding hypotension. So that's the hemodynamic side of our product. I described how our product has hemodynamic and renal effects. Our product also has a more potent renal effect. And the way we do that is we combine elements of peptides. That's why we call CDNP a chimeric natriuretic peptide. We take elements of the CNP peptide, which has favorable hemodynamics, and an element from the DNP peptide, which has the most potent renal response. And we combine them for a peptide which we feel has superior attributes relative to those that are currently in development or on the market.